90.3 WHPC now presents Law You Should Know. The law affects every aspect of our lives, our home, our jobs, and our recreational activities. Now, learn about the law and how to protect yourself against the loss of your liberty or property, and learn how to stand up for your rights and seek compensation when you have been wronged. Your host for Law You Should Know is attorney Kenneth J. Landau, a past dean of the Nassau Academy of Law, and frequently lectures to lawyers on ethics and avoiding problems with clients, and to the public on how to choose and use lawyers. This is Law You Should Know on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC.
Hi, this is Ken Landau, and welcome to Law You Should Know. We're going to talk about how to choose the right lawyer for your divorce, especially during COVID. And my guest is attorney Larry Sarezky. He's an attorney admitted in Connecticut, and he's also the author of the book, Divorce Simply Stated, How to Achieve More, Worry Less, and Save Money in Your Divorce. Larry, welcome to Law You Should Know.
Thanks for having me, Ken.
First of all, what are the trends of divorce during COVID? Is it accelerating the trend? Are they holding off on it and it's going to be a bigger demand after COVID? Or will COVID have solved some of the problems that distress couples and they'll figure if we can get along better during COVID, we can survive anything?
I don't think COVID's going to solve much, unfortunately. It might be a bellwether, though, for people to test how good their marriages are, because like everything else that COVID is stressing, it's putting stress on marriages. So yes, there's going to be some pent-up demand, I'm afraid, for divorces once we get back to normal.
But on the positive side, if a couple can narrate, survive, compromise during the COVID storm, that may give them a signal they can tolerate anything down the road.
Absolutely. You need to take a test to drive a car, but there's no test for getting married. But COVID might just be providing a test. It might be showing people the skills they need because they have no choice. And so there'll be some marriages out there that are strengthened. There's no question.
And let's talk for a minute as a matrimonial lawyer. What are some of the most common reasons people get divorced and how COVID may exacerbate or minimize those reasons?
Well, one group is where one of the spouses has done something wrong, whether it's an extramarital affair or it's some financial stuff that was kept secret. So that's kind of one basket. The other basket is full of people who have just grown in different directions. And then, of course, the strains of maybe there are financial problems, or maybe there's a child with special problems. And, those kind of strains can further put the marriage in jeopardy.
Now, can counseling, marital counseling or some other counseling reduce some of those gaps or help the marriage to continue? Or from your experience, it just reveals a bigger rift?
I'm a big believer in counseling, both for the husband and wife and marital counseling. It's certainly worth a try, especially if you have kids. When you look at what's at stake for them, divorce does turn their worlds upside down. So it's certainly worth a try to have some marital counseling.
So it's certainly good not to rush into divorce if you're having problems because of COVID or other dynamics. It's worth to seek a professional to try to see if maybe a different mix will help and reduce that situation. And if not, you can move ahead with the divorce.
Right. There's what they call an emotional divorce, and which differs from the legal divorce. And there are stages of grief when a relationship such as a marriage ends. And so sometimes people aren't through that emotional divorce and they're not ready for the legal divorce. So the timing can be important. And as you say, you don't want to rush into it.
And aside from adultery and things like that, marriage can mean different things and different expectations to different people. So if couples are not on the same page about that, or they grow more apart, or they're image of marriage grows in different directions, a trained counselor or mental health professional might help them explore those issues, and maybe there are some things they can compromise on to keep the marriage going.
Absolutely. Like I say, I am a believer in counseling. I used to tell my clients, if you've never had counseling, congratulations on your mental toughness, but now's the time. You can certainly use it.
And they need a trained neutral to understand and frame those issues. Not something by having a cup of coffee they can really turn their marriage around.
Right. Now, don't think that, going out for a cup of coffee with a friend and venting is going to fulfill your needs. Experienced family therapists can really be of help.
Someone has to, they've taken a course, they feel they have to get a divorce for one of the reasons you mentioned. So they have to pick out the lawyer, and that relationship is going to be very personal and a lot riding on that. So how important is that relationship?
It's key. There are two really important decisions that you have to make in your divorce. Unfortunately, they both come right at the beginning when you may not be at your best and you're most able to make decisions. But the decisions are, what type of divorce do I want, and what kind of lawyer do I want? And the second one depends on the first, and I'll explain what I mean. There are essentially two kinds of divorce. There's the traditional court-based divorce that you see on TV, and then there's alternative dispute resolution, or ADR. And in divorce, that usually takes the form of mediation or what's called collaborative divorce. And that is a means of resolving all the issues outside the court system. And it's a way, if it's done with an experienced mediator or experienced attorneys and well-intentioned spouses, to resolve issues faster, and that means at less expense.
Now, do you advocate one system over the other? Are there advantages and disadvantages to each system?
I think every couple should consider ADR. It takes two to play that game, however. So by that I mean both parties have to enter into the mediation or the collaborative divorce with good intentions. They're not there to do an end run around the court system or anything like that. They have to have the desire to resolve issues, that's financial issues and child-related issues, fairly, in a way that will keep the family, that is, the kids and the relationships with the parents, as intact as possible. Once you get into the court system, you're in what's called the adversary system. And that was a method developed in the medieval times in merry old England. And unfortunately, their models for dispute resolution were trial by ordeal and trial by combat. So you get an idea of what our court system is based on. And, really, there's no worse model for...
And in that system, you're essentially hiring a gladiator to fight the battle for you, and sometimes it's a battle to the death.
That's exactly right. The theory behind it is you throw these two gladiators, the lawyers, onto a battlefield, which is the courtroom, and out of their combat, the truth will emerge. And as I say, I can't imagine a worse model for resolving family disputes. And I've tried to think of one, but I can't.
Well, the truth may emerge in these other settings, but the punishment, the revenge is going to be exacerbated, and that may be out front in the gladiator model.
Exactly.
And it's not designed to be constructive, it's designed to be punitive and vindictive.
Right. Anything that's based on conflict is not a good thing, and the court system actually encourages conflict. So if you can stay out of it, stay out of it.
And also in the arena, we call the courthouse. I mean, you're also surrendering control. Aside from these gladiators fighting to death at great expense, you don't really know what rules they're going to be evaluated by or what the referees are going to, find in your favor or in favor of the other side. It's really like a roll of the dice. You have no control or little control over the process or on the ultimate resolution. That's a really good point. In ADR, you are able to frame the issues as they are as they are prioritized by you and not by the court system. And you also made a good point with respect to how expensive the court system can be. I don't know what Sir Lancelot charged per hour, but I'm sure it's not as much as the lawyers charge today. So again, if you can see your way to ADR, that's the way to go. And you're also paying for punishment. You're not paying for constructive resolution. Yeah. And God knows there's enough punishment in divorce to go around. You don't need to add to it by going through the court system. Okay. I would like to just remind our listeners, we're talking about, choosing the right lawyer for your divorce. Our guest is attorney Larry Sarezky. He's also the author of Divorce Simply Stated, How to Achieve More, Worry Less, and Save Money in Your Divorce. We've been talking about some of the different models out there of getting divorced, the traditional advocate system in the courts, alternatives such as ADR, alternate dispute resolution, and using mediation, etc., and also, whether maybe there's hope for your marriage and how to explore that. So if someone feels they have to choose a lawyer, what are some of the things that a person should think about, especially if they're getting recommendations? How should they evaluate that to see if that is the right lawyer for them? Well, as I said earlier, the first question is what kind of divorce you want. So if you choose ADR, you're looking for a lawyer with a little bit of a different skill set than if you choose the court-based divorce. For court-based divorce, you want a skilled litigator. You want somebody who knows his or her way around the courtroom and has a toughness. For a mediator or a lawyer involved in collaborative divorce, you want people who are focused on reaching agreement, getting to yes. That's their goal. And so, as you can see, you wouldn't need to have a courtroom star representing you if you're in mediation. So that's the first thing. Do you still want someone who's going to advocate for your interests, maybe not with a ball and a chain, but who's going to speak out to help you get what you need and what they think you're entitled to? Oh, yes. I always look at a lawyer's first job as persuasion. And whether that's in the courtroom or in negotiation sessions, that's the job. And you definitely want someone who you feel understands what you want out of your divorce and is able to communicate it and is able to present it in a negotiation session in a meaningful and really commanding way. Now, if there's children involved or there's a difference in income levels or perhaps one person's not working or both people are not working because of COVID, one of the initial concerns is going to be temporary support or visitation or alimony, if that's the right word. And those issues can be resolved in either arena? Right. If an issue like temporary support is resolved in mediation, what should be done is an agreement is prepared and it's submitted to the court and it's made a court order. And is how quickly a lawyer responds to your concerns, your phone calls, your emails? What is their demeanor when they meet with you? How should you evaluate all that stuff? Along with recommendations of friends, well-meaning friends or relatives. Right. That's where friends who've gone through divorce can be really helpful because they can tell you things about their lawyer that you might not otherwise know. And one of the big ones is how responsive was the lawyer when you sent her an email or called her up. My rule used to be, because I'm recently retired, my rule was 24 hours. I would get back to a client within 24 hours unless I was in trial. And if I was in trial, one of my staff members would call the client and say,
Larry's in trial, he'll get back to you as soon as he can. So yeah, that's a really important thing. And the reason is nobody likes to be ignored. And that goes double when you're paying somebody to pay attention to you. So if you're not getting a return call or a return email, that's the kind of thing that starts to simmer and starts to undercut the attorney-client relationship.
And it's also not a good start, and it's only going to get worse when you're in the middle of very complicated things and you want some support and information.
Right. I talk in the book about the initial consultation with a lawyer. Your first meeting with a lawyer, you're there for several reasons. One is to get some answers to some questions that have been troubling you, keeping you up at night. And the other is for you to evaluate the lawyer. And keep in mind that you're seeing this lawyer at her touchy-feely best in that first consultation. If you are feeling that there's no connection there, you might want to try somebody else, because it isn't going to, as you say, it isn't going to get any better.
And you also want to, see if they're focused on solving and settling the case, or are they dragging it out and telling you need a million legal proceedings and motions, because all those are going to be uncertain and they're going to be very expensive, and they're not going to really help with a long-term resolution.
Right. I recommend to folks, and I have it in the book as well, that at the very beginning of the attorney-client relationship, the lawyer and client sit down and write out a goal statement. And that goal statement will include how strongly you feel about resolving the case by settlement rather than going to trial. And you can even if you're in the court-based system with a lawyer, you could mediate issues such as what to do with all the stuff in the house. If you can't agree on that, rather than have a court hearing and all the animosity that occurs in a court hearing, go to a mediator for a couple hours and work that out. So that's something you can tell your lawyer right off the bat. Listen, I don't want to spend my time or money on you in court where I can avoid it.
And in court, it could be a waiting process. You might be waiting for hours to see the judge for a few minutes. You might be coming in for an endless string of conferences, and the court may require you to be there as well. And money will be wasted basically doing nothing, on treading water.
That's right. And you also have to factor in travel time. One of the things I tell people is find a lawyer who's very close to the courthouse, all of the things being equal. If you have two lawyers you think have good credentials, good amount of experience, you can make a connection with them. They seem to understand what you want. If one of them is 10 miles from the courthouse and the other one is across the street, take the one across the street. You won't be paying for travel time.
And as you mentioned before about mediation, the court, it's a trend for the courts to turn things over to mediators. But it's usually through the court system. So if you and your spouse can agree on your own mediators, you will have more control over the process. That's
right. Mediation gives you that control that, as you mentioned, you lose little by little in the court system. And, it varies in different states. But if you can find somebody that you and your spouse agree on as a neutral mediator, and it should be a lawyer, by the way, then, go to it.
I'd just like to remind our listeners that we are talking with divorce lawyer Larry Sarezky. He's also the author of the book on choosing the right lawyer on divorce, simply stated, how to achieve more, worry less, and save money in your divorce. And he also has a website, divorcesimplystated.com. And we're talking about choosing the right lawyer for your divorce. Should clients look at the retainer agreement, look at the hourly rate, be concerned about the billing practices?
Absolutely. One thing about hourly rates that clients occasionally miss is this. Lawyers charge, or many lawyers charge, not for the actual minutes that they spend on a matter, but they charge a percentage of an hour, whether it's 1/10 or 2/10 of an hour. And they have that as a minimum. So here's how that works. Let's say a lawyer charges in increments of 1/10 of an hour. If you call a lawyer and have a 3-minute conversation, she's going to charge you for twice that amount of time because 6 minutes or 1/10 of an hour is her minimum. What you really want to do is avoid a lawyer who uses a minimum of 0.2 or 12 minutes, because then that 3-minute conversation, you'll be paying 4 times what the lawyer actually spent.
And it's negotiated. I mean, just you can find a lawyer who's willing to work with you. If you're calling up to find out what time your deposition is tomorrow, or one quick question, maybe the lawyer will say there's no charge for phone calls under 0.2, or at least to start off. Because you certainly, as you said, don't want it increased to a minimum. It's like when you go repair a car and there's a shop clock versus the actual time to fix the car. It can really run up that hourly rate, especially with lawyers.
That's true. And one other thing that folks should keep in mind is with a question about what time is the court hearing, something like that, call a staff member, call the secretary or the paralegal. You don't need the lawyer to answer that question and put it down on her timesheet.
And you also want the time spent in court to be productive. If it's going to be 3-hour wait, maybe you can see if they can, especially with using the internet, have a real appointment. So there's no 3 hours waiting in court. Or you'll do the waiting and call the lawyer when they're ready.
Right. Again, the practices in states vary. But another thing that you should be aware of is if you're in court, your lawyer might have 2 or 3 matters.
So you want to make sure they're just billing you for the time spent there on your case.
That's right.
And you want to make sure there's no minimum time for them going to court. If it's going to be a half hour, you don't want to pay for a 3-hour minimum.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
It's more or less negotiable between you and the lawyer. And you can find some lawyers might be more flexible about the billing or just have a flat fee for a conference. So you're not worried about it escalating to hundreds or thousands of dollars for one court appearance, which may not accomplish anything.
Right. There are lawyers who will negotiate.
What are some other tips in your book that you want to convey to our listeners?
Well, I think that the sense of the book, and the reason I wrote the book, is that the greatest fear that I've noticed in new clients is the fear of the unknown. And so one thing that you can do that will really help you lower the flames on that fear is to educate yourself a little about divorce. And besides books like mine, the first place I would go is to your state's Bar Association website or the Judicial Department website. They have help there. The materials are really good as a rule. They are in plain language, and they will tell you a lot about how divorce works where you are. Now, the more general books like mine will go into other areas like how to be a witness and how to hire a lawyer and all that. But as far as how the procedures work, that's a good thing to know. And knowledge really is power in these situations. You'll start to feel a lot better once you have an idea of how things work. It's a very, we understand as lawyers.
Can you bring a friend or support person with you when you go to the lawyer for a consultation, when you go to court, when you're in court for an intense proceeding?
Sure. And I think it's a good idea to do that, especially for the court proceedings, because there is that waiting time that can drive you a little bit nuts too.
Now let's fast forward. You're in the heart of negotiations. You're trying to resolve the case, whether it's in court or through ultimate dispute resolution. Do you have to be a little bit flexible and just, because you don't know what the final process may be? It's a crapshoot. It's untold legal fees. At some point, is it in your best interest to bite the bullet and settle the case? It's something you can live with?
It's a continuing cost-benefit type of analysis. Is what you're arguing about worth the money that you're going to spend and the animosity that it's going to create? Or is it better to give up on this point and, be able to point that out later in the negotiation on something you feel more strongly about. Say, listen, I really wanted those Wednesday evenings with the kids, but I gave up on that for now. But, I hope you'll, see my position on the particular issue.
And if you're having conferences, negotiations or a mediation or a trial, it's important to take time out to go over with your lawyer what your concerns might be, where there may be a little bit flexibility, perhaps some arrangements, thinking outside the box to make it work for you.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And I'm a big believer in prep meetings. And I mean by that before you go into negotiation, you have a meeting with your lawyer. You look over, there may have been a settlement offer and a reply that have been exchanged. Go over those and talk about, what happens if, they do this, or, how much flexibility do we have?
And also what your lawyer thinks the range of possibilities for resolving it, which is going to change, and what is the best you can do under the circumstances, and what will take you for you to get there versus just, to resolve it now.
Right. You can ask your lawyer for a range of outcomes right at the beginning, but most lawyers will quickly, as lawyers do, add a caveat that, it's still early in the case and we don't know.
But as you get later in the case and toward the end, it's important to re-explore that issue.
Exactly. That's what I was going to say, that is a kind of a living, breathing thing. So it will change over time.
Okay, Larry, just give us your website again and the name of your book.
The book is Divorce Simply Stated, How to Achieve More, Worry Less, and Save Money in Your Divorce. And it is at divorcesimplystated.com, or you can get it on Amazon. And then I have a film as well on child custody that you can find out about at childcustodyfilm.com.
And I just want to mention to our listeners, whatever you've heard is presented as information only. You should get advice about your situation based on, your consultation with a lawyer. Larry, is it good to consult with more than one lawyer as you're deciding on who to hire, as just as you might consult with a variety of doctors?
Absolutely. If you can do that, that's the way to go, because you'll really start to see the difference and get an idea of the range of lawyers. And what I would recommend to people is that when they call up to make that initial consultation, ask if the lawyer charges for an initial consultation.
And it might be a reduced fee consultation. Some lawyers cannot give their time away for free, but that you can't afford to spend full price for an unlimited consultation. I'd like to thank our guest, Larry Sarezky. Please keep in mind that many bar associations have free resources available to the public about divorce, and court systems do as well. And whatever you've heard today is presented as information only. If you want to listen to the podcast again or tell someone else about it, just go to the website for WHPC, nccradio.org. Please join us again at this same time next week on 90.3 WHPC, the voice of Nassau Community College, for another program on Law You Should Know.